or life.
All right, welcome everybody to the weekly roundup for June 23rd, 2023. And I'm kicking it off today. Terry and I were talking before the call. I told her about a client that I had this week who made a decision, something that happened in the business. And long story short, some of the teachers revolted or just had a really strong opinion about the decision. They ended up talking about it together in the lobby where other people could hear, and it got back to the studio owner. And it's really, obviously, one, it's disappointing. Two, you feel unsupported as the studio owner. And three, what do you do about it from there, right? So of course, she decided to have one-on-one conversations with each individual. And, we talked about where she had perspective about, did I make a mistake here? What can I do better for next time? And if the same situation comes up, and I think that's always really important to reflect on. And the other thing is, I think, having that buy-in from your team, we've talked about this a bit. And I know I've mentioned when I had our team meeting about everyone bringing their whys, and it really brought us together. But I think the other part that really got the team on board and understanding where I was coming from as the owner was a very regular cadence of, we call them Monday minutes. And so I would communicate to the team once a week, every week. And it was usually under a 5-minute video in our private Facebook group, but just to keep them informed, keep them in the loop. They could ask questions, in the comments if there are any concerns. But, it's that constant reminder also, like, we're there for the students. And the decision that was made in this instance with my client was for the benefit of the students. And I think maybe there's just a little bit of disconnect where the teachers are now not really, they're there and they're thinking, well, I don't know, not without going too deep into what happened. They forgot that as the core, meaning of the studio, is that they're there for the students. So I don't know, I just kicking it off there. And those are my 2 cents about, getting the team on board, and also recognizing if you've made a mistake. Like, I think that the team respects you when you can say, you know what, I've reflected about this. The way I'm going to do better next time is. And I think that's another way to gather your team and get them on board with you. Terry, do you have any thoughts?
Oh yeah, I can talk wax poetic on this one, because I certainly made some stupid ass decisions as a studio director. And there are a couple in particular that really stand out. And one was, and I think this happens a lot at studios, particularly during the busy seasons, and it revolved around teachers practicing, right? And so, like, in very busy classes, particularly, it's like sometimes obviously one of the perks of teaching, and we want the teachers to be involved in the community. I feel it's really good when the students see the teachers practicing. In fact, I was like, when I would set up next to somebody, sometimes we get, oh my God, you're practicing next to me? And I'm like, trust me, my practice isn't that stellar, but so it really is important. However, remembering that it's the paid clients that keep our doors open. And so I had this, it's like classes were full with wait lists, and I had to make a decision that, hey, God, and, if don't sign up for class, it's like, if we can get you in, we'll get you in, and I may have to pull you. And that happened. And actually, one of the people I pulled was my partner, which was actually even worse, because the community loved him way more than they loved me. And I was like really irritated one day, because it was just like, my teachers were, so I stormed, imagine this, stormed into the room. I said, you got to get out of here. I grabbed his mat and just pulled it and left. And he's like, he was stunned, and the class was stunned. You could have heard a pin drop. And then I said, okay, now you can go take his spot. Talk about a bad decision. Talk about a bad decision. So, yeah, that one did not go down well. So in that case, I did a lot of mea culpas. which is I'm sorry's. I did a lot of I'm sorry's, and then I backed up and I changed the policy. And I just let my staff know that and the why we do this, right?
Mhm.
So I made the decision before I put the why in there.
Mhm.
And then,
Yes.
right, it's to your point, what's the why behind it? And and every time when I think about decisions I made in my business, and it was always specifically around staff issues, because let's face it, we're human beings and we have feelings and emotions. And almost every time that I had an issue with the decision, it was always me. It was one, I didn't communicate the why. And I just was like, unilateral, this is happening, and not soliciting feedback from, and instead of like, even if you don't have a staff meeting, I love that. What did you call it? The Monday minutes.
Monday minutes.
I love that. Right? Monday minutes, so I love that routine communication. I mean, I did communicate routinely, but not like that level of frequency, which I think is a really great idea. And then looking back, if on some decisions, if it like something like that, it's like, maybe I should have solicited some feedback. Hey, I'm thinking of making this decision. Here's the issue. Here's the problem we're having.
Mhm.
Right? So tell them and remind them why this is the problem we're having around fill in the blank.
Mhm.
This is what I'm thinking about doing. What do you think about that? Or do you have another idea of how we can solve this problem? Now, in some cases, there are times when you do, as the owner, have to make unilateral decisions.
True.
That is absolutely true. And in sometimes it's because my hashtag Terry's dad used to say, because I said so, and that's all the reason you need. I'm a child. I was raised in the 60s and 70s. I don't think people parents do that these days, but it was like, because I said so, and that's all the reason you need. But even in those cases where you have to make a hard decision because there is a real reason behind it, and it's
Yeah.
like a non-negotiable reason.
Yeah.
That's when you be transparent and say, this is the situation. This is this decision I have to do because of this. I understand it's going to potentially have this consequence. However, I have to do this. We have to do this because this is how it has to go down. And then I think if you present it that way, teachers, people could be upset or whatever, but it's just like, look, we have to do this because of X. And usually I would say that might revolve around maybe a legal issue or an insurance issue or, something. I know some studios, like during COVID, their insurance carriers were saying you can't have anybody under the age of 16 or 18 at your studio. Right. And so I have a client that caused some issues in their community because they had young, kids practicing. And there were and he was just like, look, the insurance company said we can't do this or they will cancel our insurance policy. And I can't afford we have to have liability insurance.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There's an example of a decision that wasn't popular, but had to be made because there was a huge ramification if it wasn't made. Right. So those are sometimes the things is looking at the decision, but as we always like to talk about in the YC, is just being transparent about it and just saying, this is why we have to do this.
Well, I think noticing, like, are you doing it as a reaction? Is it like, was this just a one time, like something happened and you just made a split decision and maybe it wasn't the greatest decision, and maybe thinking ahead, like, okay, if this happens again, or, I think a lot of times, I mean, I tend to be that overthinker, like, okay, if this happens and it could go one of three ways. And if it does that, I'm already always kind of planning for A, B, and C. But I don't think everyone thinks that way. And so, it could be that maybe you need to have a little more forethought going forward, so that you can plan for, okay. And I think that's where this situation got a little out of hand, is that, when you set expectations or you set policies in place, everyone is clear and it makes sense, right? And you've probably talked about the why and everyone understands that. But the reactionary response where it was like the rug was pulled, people are like, why is this happening? That's where you get into trouble. So just like you said, let's have a solution together, or, no, I've thought about this and this is the way I'm going to do it because of that. And communicating that to your staff, I think, is helpful and gets a little more respect. So
I liked what you said, Carol, about, asking yourself, are you reacting? Are you reacting to a situation, or is it a strategic decision? And sometimes, like that time when I went in and yanked my partner out of class, that was absolutely reactionary.
yeah.
And I'm like, Carol and I are like polar opposites in terms of personalities, because we did this last year at the summit. We did our enneagrams.
That's right.
And so my mother always was saying I was the child that would run and jump into the deep end of the pool without looking to see if there were water first. Carol probably would go to the edge, not only see if there's enough water, measure the water to see, okay, can I just ease myself into, can I jump into it? Can I dive into it before doing anything? And whereas I'm the one that's pedal to the metal and going, woohoo, right? So
that's hilarious. So true.
So true. So sometimes as owners, we also have to look at our own construct and how we react or respond to situations. And if you tend to be more like me on the more emotional side, that's when we have to learn to actually what we flex your personality and maybe channel that other part, that more rational part of your brain. Conversely, sometimes if you're coming at it from a place of pure rationality, you may have to look at it from, okay, it makes sense to you, but everybody's getting so upset about it, right? It's like sometimes there's that. It's like, what's the big deal? It's not a big deal. Well, obviously, it is a big deal to some people. So maybe depending on your personality type, you might have to say, okay, how does this look emotionally for people?
Mm-hmm.
Because just like we say in sales, people make decisions emotionally first and then back it up with logic, right? So oftentimes we react to situations emotionally and then we back them up with logic, even if that logic is flawed. And I can think of some pretty prominent person in this country of the United States who does that all the time without naming names. Maybe you could think of who that person is. Just saying. Anyway, so I digress. Yes. So there's that. So I think it's really important as a business owner to understand your personality type, right? I'm just making a note here to myself, because understanding your personality type and how you react to stress and what you do in stressful times is a really good thing to understand. And I say this because back in my corporate days, we did a 3-day all staff training where we had the sales team and the operations team together. And it was leadership. It was like basically a leadership development thing. And it was really, really interesting because, salespeople typically are, typically. And ops people are very more like Carol, right? And that's what we gravitate to, those professions that are more like our personality. And I was always at loggerheads with our ops manager, and he drove me crazy and I drove him crazy. And I was like, always thinking he doesn't like me, da. Well, it turns out we both just were so different personality styles that what I was thinking was important, he was like, what the big deal? And I'm thinking he doesn't care enough. And she's like, she's overreacting. So it was like really taking that step back and looking at your personality type and then understanding how do you react when things are good? How do you react when things are not so good? How do you react in stressful situations? And so like for me in a stressful situation, I over communicate. I want to talk to people. I want that. Whereas this person, his name is Ray, when he's under stress, he likes to retreat behind closed doors. Sound familiar, Carol? And then work out the problem himself and process that. And in the meantime, I'm the person that's banging on the door saying, let me in, let me in, I need to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I can't talk to you now because I need to process. So
Mm-hmm.
we all, so understanding as a business owner how we react and respond is a really, really good thing, because then there's very little we can control in our lives, right? Very little. We like to think we can't, but what we can control is ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? We can control how we react, how we respond, what we say. So understanding yourself, so, and using your yogi powers to, and that's why we do yoga. It opens us up, right? It takes us to a different plane, a different understanding of ourselves. And I can tell you, yoga definitely helped me with in understanding myself and how I react and respond.
For
right?
sure. Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure, right? So understanding that can really help you in your business. And so there's loads of personality. The Enneagram one is really fascinating. You could do that with your team. There's the Myers-Briggs. I've done Myers-Briggs a bunch of times. There's a lot of different things out there. There's classes you can take, but maybe just read a couple of books too. And another really good book I found that I read about with someone recommended, and I read, I think it was the year before I decided to sell the studio, or that year, whenever it was. Are you guys familiar with the 5 languages of love, the love languages? Well, there's one called the 5 love languages of the workplace.
Oh.
It is really fascinating. And as I read it, now you can sign up and have trainings on this. And, obviously the book is just the one step for them to kind of make money off of it, but
Right.
I didn't go to that level. But I did read the book, and, because what you can take a test to find out what is your love language at the workplace. And then as I'm reading this book, I'm thinking about my staff at the time. And while I didn't have them take the test or anything, just by reading the descriptions, I'm like, oh, that's this. I bet you that's this person. I bet you that's this person.
Yeah.
I bet you. And it talks about like what motivates them and things like this. And this also kind of goes into, it's a great book to work if you're thinking about like performance-based pay, right? Because Kay did a great webinar in December. And if you're on a premium membership and you're thinking about performance-based pay, I'd go watch it for sure. Because it's, a lot of people are not motivated by money, right?
And I feel like we've seen that a lot with just the yoga studios in general. Like we don't see that that's a big motivator, right?
It's not a big motivator. There's I can't remember which love language it is, because it's been a while since I read the book. But when I was trying to incent my staff, my teachers were employees, but before I had front desk staff, I was trying to incent my teachers to, sell memberships and things like that by giving, paying them. Well, it didn't work. And I'm like, what the heck? Why isn't this working? Man, if when I was a yoga teacher, if the owner said to me, hey, I'll pay you $20 for every person you sign up for the membership, I would have been all over that. I one time went away for a couple of weeks to visit my mom, and I said, I'll give you $50, half of the first month membership. Didn't sell one.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
And it's like, I'm thinking they don't care.
But it's just not their motivation.
It's not their motivation. Did you find that in your business, Carol?
I mean, yeah, we tried a little bit of that too. Some kind of monetary bonus for signing up memberships. Same thing, didn't work. I feel like, people are there because they've had such a powerful experience with the yoga. They love the studio. They love the people. And it tends to be, from my perspective, is just like shout outs, like, oh, so-and-so had, this person give them an amazing review, great job, like that's what the staff seems to be like, oh, okay. It's not even like, you don't get a boost in pay just for, a great Google review. That's intrinsically why they're there and why they know that it's about the students. And so giving them a great experience. So if you can take those little bits, like, publicly with your whole staff, push that. Like when there is a great review that somebody gets or a shout out that a student gives, like those tend to be, I think, the biggest motivators and makes people really like stick as staff members, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally. I think that's a great idea. I did quarterly reviews. And one of the things I did in the quarterly reviews is I would copy and paste reviews like Mind Body, like because we had the Mind Body app and we encourage people to leave reviews and stuff like that. So I would look at those reviews and I would post I would share with them some of the reviews that when they specifically mentioned the teacher. And
Yeah.
I think to Carol's point, it has some intrinsic value to people. It's like that's one of the love languages is
Yeah.
I think one of the love languages is being of service. People who like to be of service. And so people like to be of service, then giving them money is rewarding them with money is not a motivator.
Right.
So finding, and then in this book of, it kind of, it lists what are the things that will motivate someone to be of service, right? So, those are the type of things. So, and then when you're looking at motivation for employees or how to maybe give an extra little perk for employee, like, yeah, you can do I know one of them is time, gifts of time.
Okay.
Right. So sometimes it's like, okay, maybe you give a bonus, a dollar bonus. Yeah, great. Dollar bonuses are always great. However, what about a gift of time? What about taking out a teacher or a staff member and just say, hey, I'd like to take you out to lunch one day, or I'd like to take you out to dinner, just a one-on-one, just to hang out, get to know them, just because time is one thing we can't get back. So when you're offering to give a gift of time to someone, that can have a lot of value.
Yeah.
Right. So that's something, finding out what, motivates your employees and based upon what their personality is. And like I said, there's ways to do that. You can educate yourself on this and get an idea just by reading. It's like, oh yeah, I know this person's probably this person probably this, like I said before.
Yeah.
So and know thyself. To thy own self be true. Know thyself. I think
those are oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say those are all great ideas. And yeah, I think that's part of, knowing your team and getting them bought in. I was my mind was going to, okay, what if you made a big mistake as a student owner? What do you like, because you can either dig your heels and be like, no, I'm the boss. This is my decision. I made it, and long, story over and done. This is what it is. But at the same time, if what kind of respect will you get from your staff if you have that sort of attitude? And how, what's the opposite of that? Like, would it be better to say, what, I reflected, I was being reactionary? I mean, I think that, responding in a way that's, heartfelt and, maybe you do need to have a one-on-one with each person and say like, I'm sorry. And this was a bad decision. I mean, we're human as business owners too. We make mistakes. So, I don't know. It's just that's where my mind was going at this point. Like, what if you made a big boo-boo, like a big one? Like, this is a bad decision.
Been there, done that. Yes, I had a teacher. It was a bad decision, and she was hurt and called me out on it, and sent me this very long, very heartfelt email. Specifically why. It was very articulate. It was very hard to read. And, again, fortunately, I had learned a little bit about myself, so I didn't, fire off a rapid fire. That's the problem with email, right?
Yeah. You got to take a breath. You need to not send it right away. Think about it.
That's always a good one. Wait a day. You can write the response out and don't do it in an email, write it in a doc, and then you can go back, And anyway, so I sat down with her and I just straight up said, I am so sorry. You are right. I was wrong. Please accept my apology.
Yeah.
And it was simple. It was humbling. And she, because she's a lovely human being, accepted it with grace and said, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for listening to me. I really appreciated that. Right. Yeah. So, like you said, we are all flawed human beings. So I think we get into it. And there's, again, plenty of stuff in the news about, you're wrong and you dig in, you dig your heels in.
Yeah.
Yeah. You dig your heels in.
It doesn't usually end well when you do that.
No, it doesn't end well. It doesn't end well at all. So, yeah. So it's just like, know yourself. Mm-hmm. Hey, that reminds me too. Another thing I think you need to know as a business owner. Did you like that segue, Carol?
I love it. I love it, Terry.
Okay, so the other thing as a business owner, you really should educate yourself on is your financials. I'm the queen of KPIs, and my story. I wasn't always the queen of KPIs, and that numbers are definitely not in my background. I was a liberal arts major. I didn't go much beyond geometry and math. In fact, I took higher math, and the teacher came to me at the end of the first quarter and said, Terry, if you drop this class, I won't fail you, but please drop this class. It's like
we're exact opposite. I was like, yeah, I did extra math. Yeah.
No. And I was like, oh, thank you, Mr. Ahern. I really appreciate that. So he basically he did fail me, which was, great. So having said that, I'm kind of teeing this story up because one of the things that early on, another hashtag Terry's dad, I went back to work for my dad after I graduated college because we had a family-owned business. And he wanted me to take over some responsibilities because he and my mom were going away. And I had to do some things with the books, the bookkeeping. And I looked at him and I was like, what? He said, okay, that's it. You're going back to college. You're going back to the local junior college. He said, you're taking basic bookkeeping. I said, no, I'm not. He goes, yes, you are. He goes, you can't tell me what. I said, yes, I'm your dad. I can tell you what to do. I'm 25 years old. He's still telling me what to do. He said, no, you need to go take basic bookkeeping. And I did. And I actually really loved it. I actually it wasn't accounting. It was bookkeeping. I took bookkeeping 101 and bookkeeping 102. So it's just debit, credit, balance, so that I understood some basic things. So then, and that has served me incredibly well. When I was in corporate America, we went a little bit deeper as our part of as an account manager. We would help people with their, looking at certain things and understanding some basic financial principles was very, very helpful. So that was a skill set that I learned, even though it was not something that I was necessarily good at. I was good at basic math. I was good at basic math, just not the higher math. So, I've been helping studios. We've been looking at P&Ls, because again, we're on a mission, right? Our mission here at the YC is to help 1,000 yoga studios be 30% more profitable by the year 2025. And to do that, we have to know where we start. And sometimes in working with studio owners, it's just, they don't understand their financials. And I'm not saying you have to be a CPA. That's why you pay a CPA. I'm not even saying you have to be a bookkeeper. You can pay a bookkeeper. What I'm saying is that you really do have a fiduciary responsibility to yourself and your team and your community to at least have an understanding of what's listed like on your P&L and your balance sheet, even if you are not a numbers person. And if you talk to like your bookkeeper or your accountant and they make you feel like an idiot because you don't know, then I would strongly encourage you to find another bookkeeper and accountant, one that understands that not everybody gets this. Mm-hmm. One perhaps that specializes in the health and wellness industry, which there are several people out there that understand our business and come at it from that place of understanding, right? So I just challenge you that if you don't understand, to educate yourself again, to ask for help. And if you don't know what a number if you look at your profit and loss statement and you don't know what that number is, ask your accountant. Because I was going through one with a client earlier and we came across 2 or 3 things. I'm like, they didn't know what it was. I said, okay, your homework is to find out what these are. How did you deal with your books, Carol?
Well, I liked doing my own books. Surprise.
That's right. But you're a number person.
Surprise.
What was your process for it?
I collected our receipts and I put them in QuickBooks. QuickBooks is my friend.
I love QuickBooks.
And
I talk.
yeah, my mom actually is a QuickBooks Pro advisor, so any questions that I have, I can always go to her. But yeah, I mean, I, I would just, we did have an accountant, but I held the books, right? And so every year he would, send me the accountant's copy of your QuickBooks file, and he would check things and we're on track, good, but I was the one collecting all the information, putting it in our books, reviewing it every month. I knew what every line item was for. And so I don't know. I understand that that is not for everybody, and it's not. Sometimes I was just on a call, I think earlier this week, with somebody. It's like, I hate doing it. It's not, and I get that. So, but you can pay somebody just to like bookkeep, like get your receipts, put it in there, make it straightforward, and make it accessible. I think that's the hard thing too, that we find with studio owners. It's like they have to go back to their, CPA or whoever is doing their books and be like, can you please give me this? And then they don't get it monthly. Like, it's just, to me, excuse me, it seems really, I don't know. I would want very easy access to my financials. And like you said, not being made to feel idiotic if I'm asking a question about what is this, like, you should feel comfortable to ask that person about your what's going on. So I don't know.
And I did the same thing. Again, not a numbers person, but I did my own books up until the last year. And then it was like, okay, I'm ready to hand this off to somebody else and pay somebody to do them. And again, I wasn't a numbers person, but because I had taken basic bookkeeping and some other stuff, I felt comfortable. I set my QuickBooks up myself. And I too had my CPA. Now, interesting what you said there is when I got a couple of recommendations for a CPA in Massachusetts, in my local area. And so I called a couple. I called one. And one of the things I'd done my research before when I bought the company is I set up initially as an S Corp. And that was my decision. And I did it strategically for certain reasons. And so when I was interviewing, and I'd already set up the corporation. So when I was talking to this one bookkeeper, I was a man. And he basically just said to me, he said, I said, I set it up as an, he goes, why did you do that? That's a stupid idea. And he actually said that to me. I go, well, because it's what I wanted. He goes, well, you didn't really need to do that. And I said, okay, thank you for your time. Guess what? Didn't go with him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then I found through a referral, a woman bookkeeper, a woman CPA, and she also had other clients that were in the health and wellness industry. So she understood our business. And when I met with her name was Wendy. When I met with her, she was like, I think that's a good idea that you set up an S Corp. I can work with, and I was like, whether or not she thought it was a good idea, it was done. That ship had sailed. I already had the S Corp. So it wasn't like I was debating between an LLC and an S Corp. It was done. I was incorporated. Right. And so the fact that she said, yeah, and it turned out to be a good thing and that primary reason was I wanted to be a W-2 employee, which you can be if you have an S Corp. And then eventually because of that, I had an owner's only 401k plan, which you can't have with an LLC. So that was one of the important things to me, because that my financial advisor was helping me with those financial decisions. So anyway, knowing at least the information on there, and as to Carol's point, having easy access. I have one client whose bookkeeper does everything analog.
Oh,
yeah.
So do they like scan the papers? Like how do they get?
It's really challenging. I said, needless to say, they're in the process of getting, the bookkeeper refuses to use QuickBooks or any other program. And she's like, yeah, I know. And so having that access is important. And whether it's QuickBooks, there's other ones, there's Xero, there's other ones out there, but at least if it's online, your accountant has access. If you have a bookkeeper, they have access. You have access. I've been on calls with clients where they go into their QuickBooks and we pull up the current P&L and we look at it and we plug those numbers into our Healthy Info calculator, which is helping studios understand their money and stuff like that. You're going to be hearing a lot more about that with our coaching program, Leads to Members program. So yeah, so I just, again, challenge you to, if it's not in your wheelhouse, if it's the ostrich in the sand, well, I'm just going to let someone else take care of that. I'm just going to challenge you that as an owner, you need to at least understand what the numbers are. Not that you have to do them,
Right.
but that you should at least understand what they are and how everything kind of flows.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, that's just sort of my rant for today. It's just,
It's
know
a good
yourself. Yeah, know yourself, know your numbers, and then admit
Right.
when you're wrong. I mean, I think that encapsulates it. Encapsulates it. Man, I've been having trouble with words lately.
It's Friday.
It's Terry.
Long week. Yes.
I used to teach a 5 p.m. class at the Bikram Studio way back in the day. And it was a fun class. And everybody called it, oh, it's Terry Friday. Because my
Terry got it. Fry got it. Yes.
Yeah, so this was back when it was hardcore, old school Bikram. And you know what my nickname was?
Tell me.
The Fryolator.
Did you get it on a t-shirt?
I should have. Yes. And my corporate name was Fry Hot Yoga. So who knew I had the perfect last name?
Oh my goodness, you do. So many ways to slice
So
it.
many ways to use Fry.
Yeah.
Anyway, so thank you all for joining us. If you're watching live or if you're watching the recording, post your comments below. Have you made a mistake that you owned up to? Have you made a decision that didn't go over with the staff, and how did you handle it? Do you know what the numbers on your financial statement mean? And if you're not sure and you don't have a coach, book a free coaching call, because we kind of get it. We're not CPAs, we're not bookkeepers, but we understand enough to say yay or nay. This is, what's going on. So, and what else? Oh yeah, and we still have some spots for the summit.
Yes.
You really want to get a jump start on your business for 2024, sign up for the summit. It is going to be amazing.
Fantastic. Yes.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. Carol, it's been awesome hanging out with you. So have a beautiful weekend, everybody, and we will see you in the YC. Now, Carol, send us off.
Go do some yoga.